Coming up.
This means war!
Welcome back, subscribers. If you are new to our channel, welcome to you too. And now, my home classes for homeschoolers by homeschoolers presents Ancient History, Part 8, Egypt's Middle Kingdom.
The Old Kingdom fell and was in a state of turmoil, but in Egyptian thinking, the pharaoh was supposed to subdue the chaos in the world and bring order, and a new pharaoh did just that. Amenemhet I reunited Egypt and established a new style of rule. The pharaohs of the Old Kingdom worked the country very hard just so they could have fancy pyramids. The pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom focused on making Egypt great for everyone. Instead of imposing high taxes and compelling people to work on projects that did not benefit the common people, the pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom began to spend money on things like irrigation projects and new trade routes that would help everyone. Egypt prospered greatly under Amenemhet and his successors, but along with prosperity came a new challenge: invasion. Egypt had natural barriers that sheltered it from invasion. To the west and to the east were large desert areas that were difficult for large armies to travel through. Invading by sea from the north was difficult because the marshes of the Nile Delta did not allow for any harbors for ships. In the south, there were dangerous cataracts in the Nile. In these parts, the water was very shallow, and there were lots of large rocks under the water that would make it very difficult for enemy ships to navigate. Sometime around 1275 BC, though, the Hyksos invaded. They had advanced weapons. They had double-curved bows, which could shoot 200 yards further than Egyptian bows, and were also lighter and more powerful. They had body armor that was superior to the Egyptians, and they had socket-penetrating axes, which were superior to the blade axe that was still being used by the Egyptians. They also had double-edged swords, which had an obvious advantage over single-edged swords. But their greatest advantage was in their war chariots. This was something the Egyptians had not encountered before. These chariots were likely drawn by two horses, and they carried two soldiers, one to drive and the other to fire arrows or throw spears at the enemy. The effect of these war chariots can be likened to the effect of tanks in the 20th century. It would have been extremely difficult for an army with chariots to be defeated on the battlefield by an army of soldiers on foot. The Egyptians were no match for the Hyksos. The Hyksos conquered Lower Egypt in the north and ruled from there. The Egyptians continued to rule Upper Egypt, but were forced to pay tribute to the Hyksos. There is barely any evidence of how the Hyksos ruled. One Egyptian historian, writing over 1400 years later, says they were cruel and brutal, but that is not considered reliable. It does seem like the Egyptians hated the Hyksos, but that was probably because they thought that they had the greatest culture in the world, and they were ashamed of being conquered by these Hyksos who were foreigners.
There is one story about a Hyksos king ruling in Lower Egypt. He picked a fight with the Egyptian ruler in Upper Egypt. Seqenenre was the Egyptian ruler ruling in Thebes. He married his sister Ahotep. They had two sons, Camus and Almost. The Hyksos king at the time was Apophis. We acted out what happened between Seqenenre and Apophis for you.
Seqenenre.
King Apophis, you sent for me?
I have figured out that hippos have been keeping me awake. Kill all the hippos.
King Apophis, this is very unreasonable, for the hippos are miles away from your beautiful palace.
Well, you remember that I killed your army.
And besides, the hippos are sacred. Well, the female hippos are sacred to the goddess Toret.
Well, but
Apophis' command to kill all the hippos in the city was absurd, and it led Seqenenretau to revolt. Sadly, Seqenenretau was killed in battle, but his son, Camus, continued the fight. He was only a teenager when he became king. He led a rebellion in the 3rd year of his reign and invaded the northern territories. He had a secret weapon, the Magi. The Magi were a highly skilled group of nomads who were very good with the bow and arrow. Here is what Camus said. I sailed north in my might to repel the Hyksos through the command of Amen, with my brave army before me, like a flame of fire, and the Magi archers on top of our cabin roofs, on the lookout for Asiatics, in order to destroy their places. He invaded Avarice, the capital of the Hyksos Kingdom. He raided the city, and the Hyksos refused to come out and fight. They hid behind their fortified walls in the middle of the city. The walls of their citadel were 40 feet high. The outer city was filled with gold, turquoise, and silver, and other really precious things. Camus filled his ships with treasure to take back to his kingdom, but he was unable to defeat the Hyksos. He died at just 25 years old without a son to succeed him. His brother Amos became king. Amos defeated the Hyksos and drove them out of the country.
In our next 2 videos, we will look at the events that led Abraham's descendants to come and live in Egypt during the Middle Kingdom. And we will see how they were affected in a very personal way when Amos drove out the Hyksos. We will go back a little ways to see how and why Abraham's grandson Jacob and his children came to live in Egypt before the Hyksos invasion. If you like this video, give a thumbs up and subscribe for more.